conservative,
Christian, mother, wife,
Air Force veteran,
gun rights advocate.
This is Stacy on the Right. Here's your host, Stacy Washington.
Good evening. Thanks for sticking with us. We have so much more program for you. Starting off with Hour 3 and Adam Ellwanger. He is a campus reform higher education fellow, professor of English at the University of Houston downtown. Adam, thank you for coming on this evening.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks, Stacy.
Wow. So I was screaming about this 15 years ago. I literally said to someone we were in a diversity committee meeting, which was a committee at the grade school level at the public school where I volunteered a lot. Our children went there, and we worked on standardized testing. So even though the name of the committee was a diversity committee, our primary mission was to eliminate the African American achievement gap from the students in the school, in the district where we were actually having our meetings. And so we would have charts and graphs and, just pouring over data from year to year and, looking at how the students were faring and what we thought might be an indicator as to why certain students weren't doing as well as others. And a same-sex couple joined that committee and immediately said, why do we always genderize everything? Why do the bathrooms have to be gendered? And why do we have to adhere to these, patriarchal, antiquated norms of calling a mother and a father a father? And I was like, because the kids actually do it. The kids say dada, mama. Like the kids actually tell us who they think we are. They literally will say it to their dad, 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 dad. And then when you freak out, they're like, yeah, because I know what your name is, your dad, dad. They do it to us. And so the argument that we were having in this meeting, and I actually got angry about it because I was like, well, why do you get to determine what my child calls me? And she said, it's about freeing children up to call their parents, anything they want to call them. And I said, you can already do that. Your kid can call you anything you want. And she was like, yeah, but we need to make it normal for everyone. And I was like, who wants this? So talk to us about how this is like literally come out of the right-wing fever swamp into reality.
The left-wing fever swamp. Yeah, well, there's been a number of colleges especially the past 3 or 4 years that have offered their students guidance on eliminating the terms father and mother from basically their language use and from any formal communication on campus. I think that this is an attempt by universities and the cultural left to eliminate our capacity to think about the differences between what a father does for a child and what a mother does for a child. Of course, it's being enforced under doctrines of inclusion and diversity, but I think the motives are actually much more sinister.
So if they could convince kids that their moms aren't their moms and their dads aren't their dads, it removes some of the authority that those individuals exercise over the kids. And we already have the television shows, teaching the kids that the parents are buffoons, that they're dumb, they don't know anything, that their ideas are old, that they want to take away your fun and your freedom. They need to pay for everything, but they still are here. Maybe you shouldn't have even been born, like that one lady who sued her parents for giving birth to her because she said that they didn't ask her about it beforehand. I don't know where they were supposed to ask her in the womb or in their imaginations, but she actually sued her family. And so we have all of these morons out there trying to tell us how to live, trying to take away the thing. There's nothing more fun than the moment you realize that another living, sentient being acknowledges you as their mom. And, when they start talking to you and they start expressing their thoughts, and you can see their little brains working things out as they ask you questions and they talk back and forth. And then when they call you, mom, they say mommy, you are so just like completely tethered to them because their acknowledgement of who you are, it's just, there's nothing like it. It's such a beautiful thing. They just want to take everything good and fun from us. They just want to.
Well, absolutely. And it's certainly true that families have different structures in our day and age, but there are some family structures that produce better results for children. And one of the sad things about erasing the concepts of father and mother, especially for young adults in college, is that it undermines the importance of those things. And like you said, having a child is really the most important vocation that you'll ever have in your life. It's, of course, demanding work, but it's rewarding on so many levels, and it's rewarding in a way that can't be replicated in any other kind of life experience. And what they're really doing is taking the next generation of parents on campus and making them believe that there's nothing terribly important about having a father in particular or a mother in particular. And this is going to have negative effects for the future children that they'll have, and one of the bigger problems is that these things don't just affect the future children of America who are deprived perhaps of a household with a father and a mother. We also know that single-parent households have much worse outcomes for children, and that children from alternative family structures are often less likely to perform well academically, more inclined or more likely to get involved in crime. So this attack on the family is also sort of enabling and facilitating lots of social pathologies that everybody in America is dealing with, whether or not they have children.
Yeah, and so when you talk about that, you sound kind of racist. Come on, Adam. What do you mean certain family structures have better outcomes than the others? That's only because of white privilege. If there's anything going on that shows out, better results, it's because white people have privilege or some drama. I keep on thinking, do you remember when they were trying out the different privileges? And for a brief, it was maybe 3 or 4 months, a few years back, someone was ripping into the author of The Bell Curve because, he went through and he studied all those groups, and they were saying, well, he's a white man. And so, of course, he found success in white, 2-parent households. And what he was really highlighting, in addition to white privilege, is marriage privilege, because married people have privilege. They have 2 incomes, or they have a woman who stays home, and the woman staying home enables the man to work harder at work and earn more money. And that's the reason why they outperform, because the moms are driving the kids to school instead of letting them take the bus, and they're cooking dinner every night, and they're taking the kids to sports, and they're helping the kids with the homework. And but by the time they got done describing what the 2-parent nuclear household was doing, it took them a minute. It literally took them about 3 months to figure out that they were actually describing this idyllic goal that most people have, that most people are working towards. And sometimes, we all acknowledge that life doesn't always work out. Sometimes someone dies. Sometimes there's a divorce. Sometimes, there's alcoholism, there's drug abuse. There's so many things that can happen. And you can be a good person, married to a good person, and you can get a curveball, a sickness, an illness, and the family can disintegrate after that. And so none of what we're saying is a condemnation on families that find themselves in the less than ideal scenario. But we are saying, right, Adam, we are saying that there is an ideal. It does produce better outcomes, and that is the goal that we should all be striving for. If we fall short of the mark, it's the same as if you're trying to keep your weight at, just say you're trying to keep a weight of 160, and you end up, fluctuating up and down, and you land at 170. Well, that's better than 220. It's better than 200. It's better than 180. 170 is 10 pounds off of the 160, but you'd rather be at the 170 than any of those other higher numbers I named off. So you're probably doing okay. I mean, within 10 pounds, there are millions of Americans who would give anything to be within 10 pounds of their goal weight. So it's about perspective, but it's not about saying, well, no one should be 160 pounds because I'm 170 or I'm 220 or I'm, because you're not at the goal, no one should have a goal. This is where we are right now.
Right.
That's their logic.
And I also think, that there's a difference between acknowledging that, by necessity, some people have a less than ideal family situation, and we need to do whatever we can to help our friends, neighbors, and family in that situation. But there's a difference between acknowledging, yes, some people are in less ideal situations, than a state-enforced advocacy of the less than ideal situation. And as Leadership Institute's Campus Reform Online was reporting 10 years ago, 10 full years ago, it was Barack Obama's Department of Education that took the terms mother and father off of the federal application for student aid and replaced those terms with parent one and parent two, right? So there's a difference.
That's exciting. Parent one.
Yeah, right. It seems like these things are accelerating, but they're actually, these trends have been around for a while, and absolutely it's true that oftentimes some children are better off with one parent than they would be with two parents who are particularly self-destructive. But that's a different conversation than recognizing that our institutions in America, whether it's the Department of Education, colleges and universities, are actually doing what they can to incentivize the less than ideal situations.
Yeah, they're basically saying, are you fat? Good. Are you not going to finish college? Good. Are you maybe addicted to drugs? Good. Are you suffering from gender dysmorphia? Good. Let us sterilize you so you'll suffer from it for the rest of your life. And if you don't, you'll want to kill yourself when you realize it was just a temporary condition. But yeah, good. And also, is your marriage broken up? Good. Are you a single parent? Good. If you're not a single parent, do you want to be one? Because that's good. I've never heard anything so ridiculous. All the hardest ways to live. They're like, do you want to try this? It's not even as good as when the drug dealers would say, do you want to try these drugs? And people in the neighborhood would be like, well, if we do try them, will we end up like those people down there laying in the middle of the road, homeless and completely out of their minds? And the drug dealer would be like, no, that won't happen to you. He would at least lie. These people will tell you to your face, oh my gosh, you should be a single mom. Yeah, you'll be poor and dependent on the government, but at least you'll be smashing the patriarchy.
I'm a parent of two kids, and one of the things that motivates me as a parent, there's a million of them, but one of the things is the belief and the recognition that as a father, I give something to my children that my wife can't give them as a mother. And she can give certain things to a child as a mother that I cannot give, right? And understanding that I, as a man, have something unique to give them sort of energizes me for the work of parenthood. And I think it's important for our institutions to recognize that fathers have a particular role and mothers have a particular role. And this erasure of these gender-specific terms for parenthood in favor of some sexless, gender-neutral term, parent, all the time, is an attempt to erase the particular contributions that men and women independently make to children and child rearing.
Yeah. And it's such a beautiful thing when, as a family, you begin to recognize that. Like when your child is a baby, it's mostly on the mom, although dads can help. But, the breastfeeding and the constant care, it's really the mom. But there becomes a moment where you see your husband tossing your baby up in the air and the baby screaming in delight, where you realize, wow, he really is doing something that I would never do. And that child is loving it. And then you proceed to watch that. I know at our house, I watched my husband toss our kids up into the air. He would throw them down slip and slides. He would all kinds of stuff. And I would just be standing there like, he's trying to kill them. And the kids would be screaming, laughing, and begging for more. But throw me in again. Toss me up again. And I remember one night telling him, what makes you want to throw the children up? And he said, they love it. I said, yeah, but it looks like you're going to lose one of them in outer space. They're going up so high. He said, no, they really love it. It teaches them not to fear, heights and this and that. And I was like, how do you know that? And he's like, well, I just know it because my dad did that too. I'm like, what? So this is
it also cultivates trust in the child. That they know
so
that their dad is going to catch them,
There's so much good in it. But I would never do it.
My daughter is my older one. And when she was very small, like she would ask us to read her a story before bedtime. And my wife would often do that. And once we had a son and he became 3 or 4, he never asked for a story. What he said was, Dad, wrestle me. Which is, that's
before bed, Dad.
You know.
I need to get hopped up on some adrenaline. And you were like, happy to oblige, son. I would see my husband doing that too. I'm like, look at what he's doing to our son. And our son would he would be breathing hard and smiling, like his face was going to crack because he was just enjoying himself so much. So, but these are the things, like, there's certain things I would do with the kids that my husband was kind of like, I don't see the point of that. But in the end, there was a point to it. And that was the two sides of the coin that they needed. And I can't imagine intentionally not doing it this way. So I understand circumstances beyond your control or life happening to you. But I'm saying for all of the millions of people, especially women, who've been duped into thinking that, what was it? Not Charlie Brown, something Brown, the woman who played Murphy Brown. Murphy Brown was the first single mom on mainstream television. And I remember my parents laughing at that show when I was a kid. There was literally, I was too young to understand how culturally significant it was, but my mom and dad were so disgusted by it. And they said, they've got her acting like she can make it and, literally juggle having a child and having this full-blown high-demand career. And she looks good all the time, and she's got money, and she's just doing such a great job. But most single moms are not professional women who choose to be single. They're young women in really dire socioeconomic circumstances whose boyfriends have knocked them up and then run off and aren't taking care of the kid. And these women don't have these options. This is the lie of Murphy
Brown, right?
It was the lie.
The whole premise to this show was that Murphy Brown's character was essentially the Diane Sawyer of the fictional world that she lived in. Mm-hmm. So, yes, of course Diane Sawyer can afford to raise a child independently with nannies and this and that if she wants to. But at the end of the day, the guy who painted Murphy's house, Eldon, right? Eldon in that show was the man who stepped in for Murphy's child that she decided to raise on her own, which means the show affirmed actually the absolute importance of a male role model for a child. And now we've moved to a place 25 years later where we won't even acknowledge that, So in a lot of ways, Dan Quayle, the vice president under the first Bush, lambasted Murphy Brown. I can't imagine what he'd have to say about the television shows in 2023.
Well, and what the television shows where everybody is extremely overweight, but not suffering from hypertension or bad knees, not struggling to go upstairs. They're just twerking and dancing and wearing less and less clothes. And we're all just sitting there like, oh, turn the channel. And the covers of the magazines where all the women are fat and hideous. And I'm saying this as someone, I was just recently overweight, lost a whole ton of weight. And I'm not saying that because, I lost weight, so that means everyone who's still overweight is bad. I'm saying I knew then when I was overweight that it wasn't healthy for me. And it took COVID to kind of say, okay, enough of this. I've got to get this under control. And it's your own personal motivation. I'm talking about not celebrating it as if it's good. You are free to be whatever size you want. We as a society should not be celebrating obesity because it kills. It actually is a cancer risk. I mean, there's so much to it. You can't think, you can't sleep. Your joints are aging faster. Your body has inflammation. And this is just one of the things that the left promotes. They don't just promote fat people or porn to kids or single motherhood. They promote every bad thing. Like, I'm waiting on them to come out with something good. Anything good, lefties, that you'll promote that I can be like, oh, well, that's good.
What they're promoting is anything that can work to demoralize the individual. And they want this demoralization in part because a demoralized people has no fight left. They have nothing to fight for or to regain. They don't have any dignity that they're willing to defend. But also, I mean, the side benefit for the sort of state and the left and universities is that a demoralized people is a dependent people, and a dependent people needs a big state. It needs a social safety net that is something more like, a social safety tomb that keeps you enclosed, right? And so a lot of times these phenomena you're describing, the glorification of fatness, the selling of porn to kids, right? The the denigration of motherhood and fatherhood. What all these things have in common is they work to demoralize the better part of people. And I think that tells us a lot about the plan that they have in store for us.
Yep. And it's for your harm. It's not for your good. Meanwhile, a little bit of self-control, a little bit of planning, a little bit of adherence to social norms, a little bit of idolization of, people who are successful, people who set a good example, and some hard work. And you too can have marital privilege. You can have suburban privilege. You can have big city privilege. You can have whatever kind of privilege you think you might want. And you can keep it to yourself, or you can shout it from the rooftops. Nobody's going to care. I certainly don't care when successful people talk about what they're up to. But if you want success, you can't opt into the unsuccessful model and then get angry when you're unsuccessful. And I feel like that's what we have, a lot of very unsuccessful people running around America right now, trying to convince all of us that they're successful or that they're happy with what they have. And we can see it in their faces. We can see it in their behavior that they're unhappy, because unhappy people try to make other people unhappy, whereas the successful people are so busy living their lives and doing what they do, they just want to be left alone, and they don't care what you think or what you do. That's how we know they're unsuccessful, and because they want to spread it around.
Yeah, and it puzzles me in some ways that the universities, which are really they claim to be interested in personal empowerment. That's what they sell. And yet you look at, the advice they give to students, the things that they teach in the classroom, and it seems almost as though what they're teaching young people who enter the university is disempowerment. And like you said, sort of disaffectedness. And it's hard for me to understand why the universities, when they know that the pathway for a 17-year-old in America is to finish school, get a job, get married, and then have children, that's the blueprint for success. It's very difficult for me to understand why, in the name of empowerment, they would prescribe exactly the opposite. It's a mystery.
Well, I think the mystery lies in the fact that unsuccessful people who are tethered to government for their most basic needs will vote for more government, and highly successful individuals, like the ones who live in the zip codes that are highlighted in the Bell Curve book, and others. He actually wrote 2 of those books. There were about American life.
Charles Murray, I think.
Yes, Charles Murray. Yes, thank you. I'm looking at the book on the bookshelf, and Charles Murray's name is small. My contacts are failing me, but the big words at Bell Curve are clearly evident, but it's like 12 feet away from here. I go into kind of the thought process of if people who crave power can only get power if you are unsuccessful, then the people who crave power will work to make you unsuccessful. And that is the formula that we're currently operating under, where they have to go to ever more increasingly dastardly methods of making people unsuccessful, because now they're attacking children in order to maintain power, because people who are in these situations will vote for more government because they don't think they can do it themselves. They've been convinced because they've made bad choices in the past, and they don't think there's any way out of it. So that's why it's so important for us to highlight these things, and also the work that you do at the University of Houston downtown, also as a higher education fellow at Campus Reform. The website for Campus Reform is campusreform.org, campusreform.org. The story from tonight, Springfield College tells students to avoid using terms mother and father, that's there at Campus Reform. It's linked in the show notes over at stacyontheright.com. Adam Ellwanger, thank you for coming on tonight. I hope to talk to you again.
Thanks so much for the invitation. Happy Father's Day to all of the dads listening, and thanks to the moms for all the work they do. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, have a great night. Oh, happy Father's Day. That's a good way for us to go into a Friday, especially. That is coming up. Have you gotten a good gift for the father in your life? I found something amazing. It was so great. My husband doesn't know this, but I gave the same gift to my dad, and I have a feeling that kids at this house are going to be giving that gift to their dad. I'm just saying. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Maybe I'll post a picture of it on Instagram. It's so cool. One of the coolest Father's Day gifts I've given my dad, I think, by far. His face was just utterly shocked when I gave it to him. He liked it so much. Okay. And I gave it to him early because they were in town and I didn't want him to open it and then, text me a picture. I wanted to see his face. So he opened his Father's Day gift while he was here visiting a couple of weekends ago. All right. We'll take the break. 866-957-2874. We'll be right back.